What's up? And welcome to Comics Icon. Now, JJ, what they called me. And on this episode, we're going to be breaking down the all new series by Marvel titled Sentry, issue number 1. And this story so far, this look like it's finna be one, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if you remember the Sentry, aka Bob Reynolds, or I should say Bob Reynolds, aka the Sentry, but he was Marvel's version of Superman with one big difference, and that big difference being he was an absolute head case, split personality. Bob Reynolds was one personality, the Sentry was another personality, and the Void was a third personality. Now, the Bob Reynolds persona was just a regular guy, with the exception of he was a drug abuser and alcoholic. Now, the Sentry, that was the superhero version. That was the Superman, the invulnerable monster, basically. Well, for the side of good. And then there's the Void. The Void is just complete evil and darkness. And if he takes over, there was literally nobody in the Marvel Universe that could stop him. Until the introduction of Null, God of the Symbiotes in King in Black, issue number 1. Where Sentry goes to attack Null, and Null just grabs him and just rips him in half because he is the king of the void. He controls that void, so it was nothing to him. So ever since then, Sentry's been gone. Sentry's been dead and gone from the Marvel Universe. We've had a couple iterations, Doctor Strange and some other stuff where his spirit or his body was kind of reanimated, but nevertheless, Robert Reynolds, aka the Sentry, has been dead since King in Black. So that brings us to this new miniseries, The Sentry, issue number 1. Let's get into it. So issue number 1 starts off in Harlem, of course, but we see a window that says Alias Investigations. And if you know Alias Investigations, that's the home office of Jessica Jones. So then we see Jessica Jones. She's drilling in a door, nothing major. But then she's on the phone with her husband, Mayor Luke Cage. If y'all didn't know, she is married. And I gotta be honest, this is something that I heard about, but I've been away from comics for a long time, and I'm kind of getting back into the mix. And I don't recall the story in which they got married, and I was surprised to see that they have kids. I was unaware of that, but nonetheless, we see Mayor Cage on the phone with Jessica, and while she's repairing this door, Luke Cage has the kids in his mayoral office, and he's asking her, why did she take Danielle's tablet? That's their daughter. Basically, he's in his office and he's at work, but driving him crazy. She using up his nice pens and all of that stuff, and he ain't feeling it. But then we get Jessica letting us know, reminding us that one of those kids, the boy named Joe, was the son of the Purple Man, who they took in back in Devil's Reign Omega number 1. So they basically talking back and forth, and then finally he tells her that we good. Joe settled Jess down. Or not Jess, Danielle. Joe settled Danielle down, and she's cool now. Jess is like, with his powers? He's like, Luke's like, no, with bubbles. And in just that moment, Jess hears a loud boom. Oh my God, what's happening? And we see Luke Cage on the phone checking on her. Is everything okay? He heard it too. So, mind you, in New York, they have the Anti-Vigilante Act. So there are no superheroes around that could check on what's going on. So her being the first lady of New York, she also is a private investigator. She's allowed to check on it. So she leaves out of the office, closes the door, realizes the window is backwards, which is such a Jessica Jones move. I'm glad they put that in there. But then we see her hopping through a sea of people to get to what just went down. Then we see the aftermath. A building is just completely decimated. So Jessica hops in. She's talking with some of the police and firefighters, first responders, basically. She's asking them what's going on, and they tell her, how you doing, Miss Cage? Good for you to swoop in, but um, we can't afford your prices, her PI prices. He's like, besides, ain't nothing left here anyway, so these people ain't got no money because their homes are destroyed. So she's like, well, I'm just here to be helpful. Remember, she's the first lady of New York, so she got to check on her peoples. So she's like, let me reach out to the tenants. And just then, Misty Knight shows up with the now Aberrant Crimes Division, and she tells them this is their jurisdiction now, and so they're in control. So then we get Misty approaching Jessica Jones. They got history. Jessica asks her what makes this her jurisdiction, and she tells her their satellites had detected signs related to a case that they were already investigating. So, of course, this was what gives a jurisdiction. So then she addresses the crowd, Misty I'm talking about, and she's asking if anybody can share their experience of what happened. And we see one guy raise his hand, and he says, hey, our apartment got hit by laser beams. Somebody else said, same with us. Then he says, then someone crashed through the ceiling and the whole building came down on us. It was all a blur. Then all of a sudden we woke up outside our buildings. So one lady runs up and says, excuse me, my roommate is still in there. Her name is Mallerie Gibbs and she has cerebral palsy. She could be trapped underneath the rubble. Please go find her. So Jessica and Misty, they like, we own it. We'll go find her. So they go and they start to dig through the rubble. And I just got to say, Misty Knight's, her robotic arm is absolutely dope. She's got a flashlight on it. She's got holograms on it. She can do all kind of things with this arm. So we see her telling Jessica that when they investigated a different site, the neighborhood was blown up just like this. She realized her suspicions were correct when they detected some residual energy of the Sentry. And it appears to be the same in this situation. But like she says, last time she heard of the Sentry, he got ripped apart by Gnome, which I just broke down to y'all. And we see Misty says, anyway, seems like he's back again. And Bob Reynolds caused so many problems. He caused as many problems as he can solve. So if the Sentry is back, a lot of innocent people could be in danger. Then Misty shows a hologram of an 18-year-old named Ryan Topper, who's also yet to be accounted for. And this was from the first explosion that Misty investigated. So as she's going through and she's scanning with that dope ass arm, she's saying, I'm picking up no signs of life, but there are no bodies in here either. So maybe Mallerie Gibbs has gone missing just like Ryan. Now, Ryan, she also mentioned earlier, he's from Columbus, Ohio. So that's something to note. Keep that in the back of your heads later on. But then we see Misty going wild with the Sentry, want a girl with cerebral palsy and a teenage boy from Ohio. So then we transition to earlier in that day. And we're at what looks to be a newsroom. So everybody's typing away, working on their stories, articles, and whatnot. When we meet a young lady that's in a wheelchair, and she's kind of disappointed because she doesn't really get a chance to write all of the articles and use her master's in journalism that she has. All she's doing is clickbait articles like First Lady of New York's 5 favorite spots to eat at. So we see she's obviously frustrated and she decides she's leaving early for the day. So we see her hop on the bus in a wheelchair, mind you, and she's just frustrated that she isn't getting the stories that she wants. And then she gives us the reveal that she's Mallerie Gibbs. Now, mind you, this is the lady that we're looking for that's missing from this building. So we see Mallerie Gibbs going into that building, and we see her roommate, the same person that approached Misty and Jessica about looking for her roommate. Her roommate's name's Clara. So when she gets in, they address each other. Hey, Clara, hi, Mal, you home early, I see. And Mal tells her she felt like doing another click clock video. I like how they come up with these fake names in the world of Marvel. But she's going to do a click clock video since, she's feeling a little bit bad and she's got an unboxing. It's a hobby of hers. She's going to do an unboxing and it's going to make her feel a little bit better. So her roommate decides to help her out. Clara, I'm talking about, decides to help her out and do her nails up so she look good doing her unboxing on camera. Then we see Mal go into her room and she tells her, or she lets us know that her mother got her into calligraphy when she was 7 years old. And she practices that every day to work on her motor skills because of the cerebral palsy. So it still takes a lot of concentration not to let her hand slip, but it sometimes does. But now, thanks to her, she has a huge fascination with Japanese stationery. So now she's going live on her Click Clock video, and she's got over 120,000 followers, so she's doing pretty good on that thing. But she's got kind of a mystery box that she picked up, and she's gonna unbox it in front of everybody on her video, her show called Serenity's Desk. So as she's opening it, on camera mind you, she notices a Spider-Man pen, and she's like, well, personally, I'm not really into him, but I like how cute his big eyes are. Hey. But then she says, let's see what else and as she says that, the pen, her hand starts to glow, and she gets a vision of the Sentry fighting the Incredible Hulk. World Breaker Hulk, mind you. And then she's like, wow. And all of a sudden, an explosion comes from her hands. And her roommate, of course, she heard, Mal, what the hell was that? Now, Mallerie is freaking out. She doesn't know what's going on. Where's this power coming from? And then she flies straight through the building. Her friend runs in, sees a hole in the wall. She's like, oh my God. And we see Mallerie. She's like, I can't stop. And she goes flying through a laundromat of the building, looks like. When she hits the ground, she looks up. She sees all of the damage that she's caused. She's like, oh my God, I can't control it. Now, why is everything frozen? Because she sees people, but nobody's moving. Everything is just stopped in time. But that's because the Sentry has an amazing amount of speed. So he's so fast that everything freezes in time around her. So she's experiencing this now. And she looks up and realizes the entire building is about to collapse. So with that super speed and flying ability, she just shoots through and rescues everybody out of the building and pulls them out while time is frozen. They have no idea what's going on. Which would kind of answer as to why the other guy said they heard the explosion, everything started going out, and they woke up outside. So then we see her kind of flying in the air, watching the damage, and she's kind of freaking out. And nobody sees her because, remember, time is frozen because she's moving so fast, kind of like flash time. So she's like, I can't be here anymore, and she just flies up into space, up into the atmosphere. Then we get the current moment right now, and we go back to Misty Knight and Jessica Jones, and Misty is scanning the wreckage. So Jessica asks her, what are you scanning for? Misty tells us she's trying to find items with high levels of the Sentry's residual energy. Maybe Mallory's belongings might give us a clue. So they start to dig and to find Mallory's belongings, what she was working on. So then we go back to the command center about a half an hour later, and we see Mallory's belongings from that room, including a charged cell phone, a ring light, and a Spider-Man pen. So the roommate Clara is telling Misty that these are some of the things she used for her Click Clock videos. You know, she makes videos where she reviews stationery. So Misty's like, so how long has she known the Sentry? Claire's like, the Sentry? The dangerous guy in the yellow tights? No, she ain't into all that superhero stuff. No offense to you and your husband, Miss Jones, talking about Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, because they both superpowered individuals. So Misty Knight's like, well, let's check out the last activities on her phone. She has a Stark device that can recover all of the data. Claire's like, that's invasion of privacy, and Misty's like, not when global security's at risk. So they pull it up, and then they go back and they see the video that she was working on. They see that she picks up the Spider-Man pen, and they see that she all of a sudden gets the powers. Misty's like, oh my God. So now she gets the whole ACD unit in there, and hey, attention everybody. Mallerie is now considered an Omega level threat. Both she and Ryan Topper may have inherited Sentry's powers. We must track down these individuals before they do anything stupid, and there may be more of them out there. So now Misty, she's bossing up. She's telling everybody, look, get the satellites together, everything we need to do to find these Sentry-related anomalies. Then now Misty, she kind of tripped out a little bit. She's finna lock Clara up, put her in a holding cell so we can get all the information out of her. Police always trying to lock somebody up for nothing. Jessica's like, I think that's a little bit overkill. You're doing a little bit too much. Just let me help you out. You're gonna need some muscle anyway. So they're like, all right. So then we see that ACD mobile unit parked where it's parked in the bike lane. And we see a guy, looks like a courier, ride past. He's like, hey, get off the bike lane. Then we follow this guy. And we see some passerbys notice his boots. Hey, I like your boots, but why are they so big? And then we get him thinking, I'm so tired of people talking about how I look. So then he goes and he pulls up at this guy's house, and we get to reveal that he's a DoorDish, not DoorDash, a DoorDish driver. And he's delivering some food to a guy, and the guy answers the door, and he's like, oh, you're one of them. That's when we get the reveal that this guy's a mutant. So then, as he gets out of there, we get some dialogue, him thinking to himself, my name is mispronounced so many times. He tells the people, if you're wondering what kind of mutant I am, I don't have any impressive powers. I just look different. He tells us after immigrating from India 7 years ago, he just wants to live a normal life. But it doesn't matter where he go. People are always fixated on how he looks. He's got an abnormal nose and some abnormal feet. So he doesn't really have any mutant abilities. He's just kind of disfigured a little bit. So then we see him pull up to a place where, he's got all his buddies there, all his courier friends, and they getting together to play some dodgeball, and they're laughing, joking, and having a good time. Then we see them engaged in a dodgeball game when all of a sudden, this kid named Farad, that's the mutant from India, gets a vision of the Sentry, just like Mallerie did, ripping something apart. Then all of a sudden, we notice that he's now crushed the ball, and a big explosion is caused inside the gym where they're playing. Now everybody's like, oh, this is one of those destructive mutants. We can't believe when we let him in here, and all his friends turned on him, and this is one of those dangerous mutants. So Farad, he flips out, and he just runs and gets up out of there. He runs and runs and finds a forest where he can just calm down, and he's by himself, and he's like, there's no coming back from this now. I'm definitely a menace and my life is ruined. Says I'm gonna be hunted down like all the other bad mutants. Then we get somebody else in the park that hears him. Hey, you mind keeping it down? Most people come out here for some peace and quiet. And we look up and we see there's a guy flying through the air, eyes lit up yellow just like the Sentry. He's also wearing a Sentry color scheme, which, wink wink, should be a dead giveaway. But he says, I can sense your energy from miles away. You don't know how good you got it. These new powers aren't from being a mutant dummy. So Farad asks him, who are you? And the kid tells him, I could ask you the same thing. Why do you look so familiar? But the new guy tells him anyway, my name is Ryan Topper. And remember, Ryan Topper is the first victim that Misty is looking for. So my name is Ryan Topper, and just like you, I've been gifted with these powers of the most powerful Avenger. Farhad's like, Thor? And Ryan's like, oh my God, no, the Sentry, you fucking idiot. I'm guessing you also saw one of his memories before your powers kicked in. Mine was him fighting the Hulk. So what powers did you get? Farhad's like, I don't know, I'm running fast. Then the kid says, you know what? It doesn't matter. And then he just lets out a blast. I want them all. Now Farhad's, hey, you trying to kill me? And Ryan's like, I don't want these powers in the wrong hands. There should only be one successor to the Sentry. And it definitely shouldn't be somebody like you. And now these two starts to brawl. They're using the Sentry powers and they going at it, but it's kind of a stablemate. They kind of got the same power sets. So it's just a back and forth between them. And then we get Farad telling him, hey, you're a psychopath. And then Ryan tells him, hey, but you're just a means to the end. No one's gonna care when you gone, mutie. Whereas I'm gonna be here fighting for the greater good. Farhad's like, greater good? You trying to kill me? I'm pretty sure Avengers don't try to kill people. So again, they fighting. But then Ryan starts to get the upper hand and he's like, didn't your dad teach you how to fight? Well, apparently Ryan has got fighting skills, which is the difference in this battle since the power sets are the same. So he's like, didn't your dad teach you how to fight? And then he said, because my dad sure did. And then he rips Farhad's arm off, flies him up into the air and tells him, thank you for donating to the Ryan Topper's The New Sentry Fund. I feel so much stronger now thanks to you. And he absorbs all of the power out of him, ending the life of Farad, just like that. And Ryan comes down. Now there's one less mutant to worry about, one less rival, and I hope the others will be as easy to find. Then we transition back over to the moon. And someone's up there crying, and we get a close-up. We see that it's Mallerie. She flew up there to the moon. She's like, I gotta stay up here because this is the only way no one gets hurt. And that brings us to the end of the issue. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about to go down. A bunch of people are getting the powers of the Sentry, but this Ryan cat, he's trying to absorb them all. Seems like he's got kind of more void in him than all of the rest. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. Will we get people with more Bob Reynolds instincts, so to speak? Will we get some Sentry people? And is Ryan Topper, is he going to be the only void type of guy? But this is going to be interesting. A bunch of people getting these powers, and one of them is trying to take them all. So definitely can't wait to see the next issue, ladies and gentlemen. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we're about to pick back up on the new story of the Sentry with issue number 2. Now, when we last left off with this story, Jessica Jones and Misty Knight had been investigating multiple instances of people gaining the power of the Sentry. Now, the former Sentry, Robert Reynolds, was literally torn apart by Null, the god of the symbiotes, in the King in Black story, and has been dead ever since. So now, random people are gaining his power. But Misty and Jessica are wondering why they are all coming up missing after manifesting. But we know that one of those new sentries has been wiping out the rest. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're ready to see what happens next in this story, let's get it. So, issue 2 begins with Misty and Jessica at the Brooklyn Community Center investigating the latest emergence from a guy named Farad Anand. Now, if you checked out issue 1, then you know Farhad was a DoorDash delivery guy, and when he and some of his courier friends were playing a game of dodgeball, Farhad instantly gained the Sentry's powers, leaving a giant crater in the gym. He then freaked out and ran away, only to be tracked down by this kid named Ryan Topper, who also had these powers, and a brutal fight ensued that ended with Ryan killing Farhad and absorbing his power. So Misty and Jessica go back and basically visit every place that we saw Farhad visit in the previous issue. And they interview witnesses, all of whom take issue with him being a mutant, even though before he had manifested these powers, they was all cool with him. Then they get word of another anomaly, and they travel off to the Tuscarora State Forest in Pennsylvania, where satellites captured a forest fire the night before. When they arrive, they notice signs of a fight, and they're able to deduce that this was Farhad because of the big round footprints, which was part of Farhad's mutation, and Ryan because of his shoe size and patterns that were inconsistent with the other person that got powers named Mallerie, because she has cerebral palsy, and the footprints were too even to match what type of pattern she'd make. So Misty requests for forensics to do what they do. And then we see Mallerie over on the moon, and she's weeping, just as we saw in the first issue when she caused destruction in her apartment building upon gaining these powers, and then ran off to hide there. Then we see Ryan show up, who's able to hear her crying from Earth, and he tells her that he's able to feel her energy like a distress beacon. Then he realizes that he's actually seen her before, as he recalls that she almost tripped him when the strange glowing man showed up. And you guys can let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we've seen this so-called glowing man just yet. So that's likely a sign that maybe in one of the last 2 issues of this story, we'll see a flashback of him. But he then tries to flirt with her, very poorly might I add, saying that those powers worked wonders on her and now she's pretty cute. But then he explains to her that they have the powers of the Sentry, so she tells him that she doesn't really want to be about that superhero life, because those powers mixed with her uncontrollable spasms might hurt somebody. So he's like, fine, stay here. You only have enough power to keep you alive here, so have fun dwindling them away. Then he heads back down to Earth, telling her to come find him if she changes her mind. Then we transition over to Times Square in New York, and we meet Marv Chow, illusionist extraordinaire, who's basically a street hustler. But when he tells the crowd that his next trick will be to catch a bullet with his teeth, a doubter in the crowd calls his bluff and fires a shot at Marv. And in this moment, as it seems as if Marv is dying, he manifests the powers of the Sentry and re-emerges fully healed. And now the crowd turns on him because they think he's a mutant. So he flies up out of there and goes to find the guy that tried to kill him. And when he finds the guy, just as he goes to attack him, Ryan shows up and tells him, "Nice resurrection trick back there. Let's see you try doing that again." And then Ryan destroys both Marv and the other guy. Then we transition over to several blocks away in Times Square. And there we meet a lady in a department store named Rosalinda, who's cleaning up the store while she's talking to a co-worker about her 3 sons. And she tells this guy that one of her sons went and glue gunned his entire room with sponges so he could soundproof it. As she then notices 3 ladies taking some merchandise from about the store. So she's like, oh, hell no. She chases down these ladies. And in that moment, she gains the powers of the Sentry and fires on these ladies, knocking them out and causing a blackout. So then she takes off and heads back to her family when Ryan approaches her saying that she's the menace behind this blackout. So she then tells him that it was an accident, but he tells her that he can't let her do any more harm. And then he destroys this lady. I mean, this Ryan dude is a complete psychopath. And he truly thinks he's doing a good job. Crazy. So then we go back over to Mallerie on the moon, as now she's starting to get a little bit lonely and she can hear the voices of people back on Earth. Even her roommate Clara, as she says Clara isn't even religious, but she can hear her praying for Mallerie to come back. So she then realizes that she needs to make things right, that she can't be scared of her spasms forever. And if that creep can figure this out, so can I. And so she goes back down to the Earth, and the first thing she encounters is a group of migrants stranded in a broken ship in the Mediterranean Sea. So she scoops up everybody, including the ones that have fallen off the ship, and she starts to fly the boat towards land. But then her limbs start to act up, but she's able to focus and get these people there safely. And the people, of course, they all thank her, and she realizes that she's way in over her head with all of this. Then we go back over to Jessica Jones and Misty Knight, as they're now looking over all of the evidence from each one of the events, including the new ones with the street illusionist and a department store clerk, both of whom are now missing. Then Jessica starts to put together that each of these people at one point visited Penn Station, that Marv usually passes through there en route to Times Square, and Rosalinda cuts through there on her way to work, and Ryan took the train to meet somebody he met on a dating app, and that Farad used the subway to make deliveries, and Mallerie shopped in the stationery shop in there. So Misty decides to narrow down the exact times that they all converge and see what they can find on surveillance. Then we see a battle happening somewhere outside of Dallas, Texas, with the Avengers taking on the UFOs, when Falcon is the first to notice a light coming their way. And then we see that it's Ryan, fully decked out in Sentry gear, and he says to the Avengers, "Mind if I cut in? My name is Ryan Sentry, and I'm here to help." And ladies and gentlemen, that, my friends, is the end of the issue. So man, I have to say there's definitely some parts of this story that don't quite cut it for me, but I am interested in seeing how this whole thing plays out. I mean, this Ryan dude is absolutely crazy as all hell, and it feels like Mallerie is the one in the end who's going to ultimately become the Sentry, or that maybe Ryan will ultimately win and the Sentry will become a villain. And who was this glowing man that Ryan talked about? So with only 2 more issues left in this story, we definitely gonna see it through. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now JJ what they call me, and today we got issue 3 of the new 4-part miniseries, The Sentry. And I'm gonna tell y'all now that the end of this video builds up to one hell of an epic conclusion to this series. And if you guys need to get caught up on how we got to this point, I'll leave a card to the playlist up top, as well as a link at the end of this video. But when we left off last issue, this new Sentry, calling himself Ryan Sentry, showed up out of nowhere and helped the Avengers take down the UFOs. So if you guys are ready to see how Earth's mightiest heroes respond to this new Psycho Sentry, then you know what time it is. Let's get it. So we picked this issue up right after issue number 2 ended, and Ryan is introducing himself to the Avengers. But they're all skeptical. For one, this guy just shows up out of nowhere without warning. And 2, they all know how unstable the original Sentry was. Plus, calling himself Ryan Sentry kinda seems fanboyish. Not only that, but Captain Marvel actually recognizes him as Ryan Topper, and she knows that Misty Knight is looking for this guy at this very moment. But Ryan, he tries to make his case that he's here to help, and he's a big fan of theirs and just wanted to surprise them. So Wanda decides to look into Ryan's past after Captain America advises her to check for red flags. And instantly, A huge red flag presents itself when Ryan gets pissed as soon as Wanda tries to use her magic. And he screams at her that she doesn't have his permission to use magic on her, in which Tony immediately compares him to the original unhinged version. So now this intro isn't going quite well, which Ryan senses. So he decides to get up out of there while letting the Avengers know that he'll find a way to get them to trust him, that he'll save the world 12 times if that's what it takes. So he takes off, but Carol Danvers still has more questions for him. Like first, how did he even get his powers? So she attempts to catch Ryan, but he's way too fast and he leaves Carol behind easily. But she notifies Misty Knight that she did actually make contact with her person of interest, and she chased him out into space. So then we transition over to Misty Knight and Jessica Jones at the Aberrant Crimes Division HQ. And they finally got access to the CCTV camera footage at Penn Station from a few months ago. And it's here where we see Mallerie and Farad and Ryan, along with Marv Chow and Rosalinda, along with a sixth person who's yet to be identified. But even then, we can tell that Ryan was an absolute douchebag. He's walking and texting and walks right into Mallerie, who's in a wheelchair. And his response is, "Can't you see where I'm going?" But then we see a green energy wave releasing right in front of these guys, along with some masked, ghostly looking figure. And then this figure takes off his mask and releases the energy onto these 6 bystanders. So after watching the footage, Jessica mentions how strange all of this seems to be, which gives Misty the idea that maybe that's who they should be speaking to next, Doctor Strange. Maybe he can fill them in on this green glowing guy. Then we transition over to Mallerie, who's flying along the northern coast of Honduras. Now she's still trying to come to grips with her powers and what she's capable of despite having cerebral palsy. And although she still doesn't quite believe in herself yet, she still wants to help people. And when she comes across people getting swept away in a flood, she quickly flies in to help. And she manages to scoop up this family and pile them onto a couch that she's able to fly to dry land. But unfortunately, she can't quite stop just yet, and she flies right into another home, completely destroying their living room wall. And now the flood is coming in straight into their home. She's pretty bad at this right now. Then we pick up at the Sanctum Sanctorium, with Misty Knight and Jessica Jones meeting up with Stephen and Clea Strange. And Misty and Jessica show them the CCTV footage from Penn Station. Then they ask Stephen and Clea about this mysterious glowing man that comes in and causes the Sentry's powers to end up in the hands of these random strangers. And Stephen seems to immediately recognize this being. Then Clea tells them that this being is a Blasphemy Cartel agent, a name which Misty thinks is completely made up. So Doctor Strange puts them up on game to who this guy is, and he says that the Blasphemy Cartel is made up of rogue agents from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s mystical division, WAND, led by Director Nunn. They wanted to control New York's mystical underworld by resurrecting dead superhumans, like Strange himself, who had been resurrected. Then he finishes, so Clea and I brought the fight to them in the Emerald City. So Director Nunn decided to play hardball by reanimating the Sentry's body, possessed by 100 million insane ghosts. It took the merged entity of my wife and I to bring down the Sentry and the entire cartel headquarters. But then Clea adds that it was Stephen's idea to show mercy to these minions, so they wiped their minds and placed them safely across the earth. But she never thought that one of them would get away, particularly one possessed by those evil spirits. So now Misty and Jessica are pissed, because this is basically a Doctor Strange caused problem. And what do people always say? The biggest threat to the multiverse is usually Doctor Strange. And Misty actually gets in Strange's face now because thanks to him, they now have 6 ticking time bombs roaming around the world with the power of the Sentry, including one who brought down an entire building in Harlem. So feeling the responsibility of this, Clea volunteers to help locate these Sentries. So Clea uses her power mixed with the data from Misty's prosthetic arm and is able to locate these Sentries, although she's only able to see 3 of them, even though Misty and Jessica are looking for 6. But we all as readers know from the past issues that Ryan actually already took out 3 of these guys. But Clea is able to identify the remaining ones including the previously unidentified Denise Daria, who's in Toronto, Canada. And Misty then finds out that Denise works for Roxcom Canada, so she decides to pay her a visit. Meanwhile, Jessica decides to try her luck with Mallerie, who's now in Denver. Then we pick up with Denise in Toronto, who's actually the CFO of Roxcom Canada. And we see that she's in her office and trying to get some work done. But she can't seem to focus right now because she hears so much commotion from miles away. So she decides to go quiet things down. And we see that the commotion was coming all the way from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So she was in Toronto, but distracted by noise all the way in Milwaukee. That's crazy. But she quiets the noise and gets back to work in seconds. Then later on, as she's now at home making some dinner, she sees a breaking news broadcast on the TV about a Chitauri attack in Malaysia. And again, within seconds, she flies over to deal with the trouble and then right back to finish her dinner. So although we can tell that she prefers to be alone and live her life, she still answers the call to help people. But this time when she gets back home, Ryan is sitting at her table. And it kind of makes you wonder how come it is that Ryan seems to sense all these other sentries, but they don't seem to do the same. But Ryan asks her how come her house is still intact, despite her powers kicking in. Didn't you destroy anything? But she tells them that only a blow dryer is all that was really damaged. But then Ryan is hit with a mental attack. And at first Denise assures him that it's not coming from her. But then she hears the voices that seem to recognize her. And we see that it's the other sentries that Ryan absorbed. So they aren't dead, but they've actually been absorbed into his mind. And they recognize Denise as the other person from the train station. And she can actually see them projected from Ryan's mind, begging her for help. But once Ryan starts to gather himself, he doesn't like that Denise can see these guys and tells her that they've been haunting him and he can't get them to go away. And when Denise offers to help Ryan, he flips out and blows up her home. And once again, absorbs another sentry. Then takes off right before Misty could arrive. Not that she would have really been able to help much. This Ryan kid is an absolute problem. And he's OP right now. Sheesh. But then we transition back to Mallerie, who's sitting on a sign in Denver, Colorado. And she's found by Jessica Jones, who flies onto the sign with her. And Mallory's first thought is that Jessica is here to take her in. But Jessica lets her know that that's not what she's there to do, although she does find it necessary to keep tabs on Mallerie. But Jess comes to her like a friend and wants to know how she's holding up with this new life change. And she could tell that Mallerie is kind of going through it right now. Then she lets Mallerie know that her roommate Clara is worried about her, which Mallerie already knows because she can hear her. But she can't go back to her normal life, which Jessica agrees with. But in this moment, Jessica seems to be just what Mallerie needs. Someone who has a history with supers, as well as her own powers. So Jessica kind of understands Mallerie and what she's going through. Because Mallerie is just scared of hurting someone or messing things up even worse than they are. She even tells Jessica that just an hour ago, she broke through a family's home by accident while rescuing people from a flash flood. But Jessica reminds Mallerie that she didn't ask for these powers, that she doesn't have to use them to save people, but if that's something that she really wants to do, then she needs to be all in and accept that she's going to make mistakes. They all do. Jessica can tell that Mallory's heart is in the right place, and with some training from a mentor, she could get used to this line of work. So now Mallerie is starting to feel a little bit better, and she lets Jessica know that it's actually pretty surreal that Jessica is there with her, because just last week, Mallerie has submitted a frontline listicle at her job about the First Lady of New York's top 5 favorite places to eat. But then Mallerie asks if Jessica could come with her to talk to her parents. And of course, Jessica tells her that she'll be right by Mallory's side. So as they leap off the sign, they're immediately cut off by a flash of light that drops them. And Ryan appears and says to Mallerie, "You should have stayed on the moon." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. So folks, how y'all feeling about this new Sentry story? I gotta admit, I wasn't quite sure at first, but it's kind of starting to get fired to me. So Ryan has been absorbing the other sentries, and now they're stuck in his head, haunting him. That's crazy. And I wonder if they'll cause the Void to come out in the finale. but it definitely seems like the finale is about to be explosive. We'll probably get a showdown with Mallerie and Ryan, but we'll probably also get to see the Avengers get involved too, which will definitely bring sparks, as well as Doctor Strange. And do you guys think that the absorbed sentries will gain their forms back? Or will they ultimately lead to the void coming out? Or will Mallerie officially become the new Sentry? Or will Doctor Strange find a way to reverse it all? What do you want to see here, icons? But let me know what y'all thought about this issue too, and where you see the story going on from here. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ what they call me. And today, we got the fourth and final issue of this new Sentry miniseries. And if you guys need to get caught up with how we got to this point, then I'll leave a card at the top of the screen, as well as a link at the end of the video to the Sentry playlist. But when we last left off, we were down to our last two people with the powers of the Sentry, and the psychotic Ryan attacking Mallerie and Jessica Jones. So if you guys are ready to find out how this battle of Sentries ends and which one becomes the new Sentry, then you guys know what time it is. Let's get it. So we picked this issue up right after the last one ended, and Ryan Topper has now approached Mallerie. But Jessica Jones tells Ryan that she and Misty have actually been looking for him. And remember, at this point, none of these guys have a clue of just how crazy Ryan is. And I do mean crazy. But Jessica asks if either one of these Sentry-powered people know where the rest of them are, because there should be 6 of them. But just then, Misty Knight calls Jessica and lets her know that Denise's home was hit with an explosion, and now there's no trace of her. And just as Jessica notifies Misty that she's with Mallerie and Ryan right now, we see the spirit or essence, not totally sure what to call her, but she whispers in Ryan's ear that they're gonna find out that he's a murderer. And then he instantly flips out and he cold cocks Jessica right in the face, sending her miles away. Sheesh, that boy crazy. And as Mallerie tries to tell him that Jessica was here to help, he tells her that all she and her friends want to do is keep them in check. So now Mallerie is realizing just how crazy this kid is and tells him that he sounds insane. But he calls her a naive child, and he can see now that she's gonna be a problem. And then he straight fires a blast at her that she's quickly able to dodge. But the blast hits a nearby building, and now all Mallerie can think of is the innocent people in there, while Ryan's crazy ass is blaming her for dodging it. So Mallerie, she swoops in to save the people, and Ryan just eye lasers her right in the back. And then once again, blames Mallerie for causing more problems. But lucky for Mallerie, Jessica's back, and now she's pissed. And she puts Ryan in a headlock, threatening to take him in. But come on, y'all. You already know she can't do anything against the power of the Sentry. And of course, Ryan just flips her off of him and sends her flying once again. But this time Mallerie chases her down and catches her. Then Jessica comes with the idea to lure him out to the Rockies so he can't hurt any more people. But he grabs both ladies and slams them into the ground, telling them that they're gonna settle this right here. And man, y'all, I'm assuming y'all hate this guy just as much as I do. He's completely nuts. But Mallerie lets him know that this is not what the real Sentry would do. And there were times when he was influenced by the Void. But behind that, Robert Reynolds tried his best to be a good, honorable hero. But Ryan feels he's doing what's necessary for the greater good. It doesn't need a hero like Mallerie, who can't handle this power, let alone herself. And as he does that thing, where the villain starts to monologue way too much, Mallerie blasts Ryan straight up into the sky. Meanwhile, Ryan is still being haunted by the spirits that he's absorbed, and they're taunting the hell out of him. Then Jessica asks him to explain what happened to the other Sentries, but Ryan tells her to be a detective and figure it out. But the spirits, they keep taunting Ryan, and he's really losing it now, as if he wasn't already before. But now Mallerie can hear them too, and although Ryan doesn't want her in his head, she tells him that she's not trying, but something's pulling her in. And now Mallerie can see them all, that there were others just like them. And she can even see how Ryan wiped out each and every one of these guys. And now Mallerie fully knows who she's dealing with. And she calls him a serial killing egomaniac. And now Jessica understands why Clea Strange wasn't able to track down the rest. But Ryan reiterates that there can only be one Sentry after Robert Reynolds, and the rest of them couldn't hold a candle to the original, which is him. And then he eye lasers Mallerie right into another building. Then Jessica straight up hauls off on him. But she's pretty useless in this particular fight, although she's giving it her all. And at least she's giving Mallerie some temporary relief. Very temporary. And then Ryan punches her straight through a building too. And once again, as Mallory is trying to save the people that were in the building that she just crashed through, Ryan comes after her. But this time she's had enough and is ready for him. And she pushes him away so that he can't keep causing collateral damage. Meanwhile, the voices in Ryan's head are now calling for Mallerie again. Then Misty Knight shows up and Jessica lets her know that Ryan is the problem and they need to take him down, which Misty kind of already figured out on the way there. But then we see that Ryan now has Mallerie and he's about to hit her with his finishing move. But Mallerie then calls on the voices in his head and they tell her to come join them for a little meeting. So they pull her inside of Ryan's head while freezing them both in time physically. And they tell her that in there, minutes feel like days. But as a mutant, Farad knows a little something about resurrecting. And he tells Mallerie to channel their experiences. And now Mallerie, she's impressed because she had no idea the magnitude of the Sentry's powers. And Misty and Jessica can now see that something is happening as a bright light starts to engulf Ryan and Mallerie. And now she's done it. Mallerie was able to pull the other spirits out of Ryan's head. And now these guys got some massive upgrades. Although it's kind of funny how everybody came out looking ripped with abs except Rosalinda. But Ryan, he doesn't care. He feels he's still more powerful than all of them combined. And for a second, he's kind of right. And he's able to repel all of these guys with an eye blast. But then they all combine and they blast him. But again, he's able to repel them away. But this time, once again, he causes more collateral damage. But the other Sentries are able to save all of the people with their powers and get them out of danger. And this is a nice change for Farad, because if you remember back in issue 1, people had gave him a really hard time with him being a mutant. So he's kind of enjoying this moment. And now they all focus their attention back on Ryan, and they're ready for a fight. Especially Mallerie, who recalls back to when Ryan visited her on the moon, as she tells him, "When you visited me on the moon, you seemed to have it all figured out. For these last few days, I thought that I was the wrong person to have these powers. I know I might mess up at times as I try to navigate these powers with cerebral palsy, but that won't stop me from trying my best. This whole time, you've been the one not cut out for this." And the collective Sentries began blasting Ryan once again. And now it's time for them to take back what Ryan stole from them. Matter of fact, they want all of it. And they begin to take back all of his power. And then unfortunately for these guys, they begin to fade away as their physical bodies truly are dead. And as they disappear, they let Mallerie know that it's all hers now. And now Mallerie is all alone. But now she also has all the power. Then we switch back to Ryan, who's now powerless and feeling sorry for himself. But I'm sure nobody feels sorry for this clown. But the ACD show up and they place Ryan under arrest. But then Mallerie comes to Jessica and tells her that she'd like to turn herself in too. She's destroyed people's homes, and even if it was an accident, she feels that she needs to be held accountable. So Misty tells her to just start off with a power inhibitor, so it'll give her some relief until she can get a handle on things. Then tells Mallerie that she did a great job, and then Jessica lets her know that they'll work through this. Then as Mallerie boards into the ACD chopper, her parents pull up, and they saw her fight on the news and they were relieved that she's still alive. They were devastated thinking that she was dead, but now they're wondering why she's being arrested. But Misty Knight assures them that they're just making sure to get Mallerie the help that she needs to figure out her powers, since they're so volatile. So then we see Ryan get hauled off to the raft. But Mallerie, she goes to the ACD. Then we see her back in her wheelchair and with her friend and old roommate Clara, who's now living in Newark. And even though it's about an hour into the city, she at least gets to work remotely most of the week. But she misses having Clara as her roommate. But then these two are approached by Misty Knight, who admits to them that when she was assigned this Sentry-related case, she was kind of shook because the Sentry is so powerful. But she takes this moment to apologize to them for how she acted. Then she tells Mallerie that she understands how hard it is to do this job with a disability. And that's why Misty is assigned herself to be Mallory's new trainer. Then, as Mallerie is happy for the help, she lets Misty know that it's now time for her to forge her own path. So from now on, call her Solaris. And that, my friends, is the end of this issue and this series. So what did you guys think about this series? I thought it was kind of cool, although I'm a little bit mad that we didn't get any signs of Robert Reynolds, like I was hoping for. But all in all, I thought it was pretty cool, and I enjoyed the artwork. Although I do see now how they did kind of leave a door open for the Sentry since Mallerie had changed her name to Solaris. And what do you guys think about the name Solaris? I was also glad to see Ryan lose his powers, although it did kind of suck to see the other Sentries lose their lives. But at least it maintained the high stakes, which I can appreciate. But I also wonder what happened to the Avengers. They did notice that Ryan had some screws loose, so why didn't they continue coming after him? It's kind of odd. But I also wonder what's next for Mallerie. And I wonder if we see any of her training with Miles Morales. Because Misty Knight had also been training him too. But what did you guys think? Do you like Mallerie as a character? Do you want to see her get her own series? Or where do you think it'd be cool to see her next? But shout out to writer Jason Liu, who did a pretty good job with this series. It wasn't exactly what I had expected in the beginning, but it was kind of fun following it. And how come everybody got abs except for Rosalinda? That's still kind of bothering me. But I guess maybe it was because everyone was represented by what they wanted to look like, and Rosalinda was happy in her own skin, which I can dig that. But as always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you can do so by joining the new Iconic Fan Club channel membership. With your membership, you'll gain access to weekly interactive live streams with yours truly in front of the camera, where we could talk about everything that's been going down in these issues, as well as ones that you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic book news. Plus, you guys also get loyalty badges, member shoutouts, and more. Or you guys can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do that, then you can still be a big help to this channel by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. But ladies and gentlemen, y'all know it's about that time. I'm out.